Good evening, garage tuners, and welcome back into the shop with me tonight. It has been a few days since I've done any car work or posted anything, and that is because we've been having some crazy cold weather here in Minnesota lately. In fact, I believe the coldest it got down to without wind chill was minus 28 Fahrenheit, which I think is minus 36 or something Celsius. I'll put it whatever. It's just been cold. It's been terrible and cold. So I haven't been out in the shop in a few days. But it has been driving me nuts, and I had to get back out in the shop and work. So today, we actually warmed up to a high of 13, I think, which after being minus 28 plus wind chill, it seems nice and warm. So back out in the shop again today. I got some new gifts from the Amazon ferry. I got, well, I'll show you as I put them on, but it's going to get us a couple steps closer to finishing up the LS and getting it ready to start. I'm hoping to finish the wiring for the alternator today. That includes the actual charging wire and the exciter wire. And then I'd like to get started on the starter wiring as well. So stick around and scream at your screen while I try and actually make progress. Oh, also I'm trying to step up the game a little bit by getting a mic-y thing because I'm not happy with the quality of the audio. So we'll have to see how this works. I might just be moving silently now, and I have no idea. But hopefully this sounds better and works better, so let's give it a shot. Now you might see this wire with its kind of clear sheathing and say, Phil, isn't that the stupid stuff they use for audio installations? Yeah, it kind of is. I didn't know it had the stupid clear sheathing, and I hate it. But I bought it, and honestly, it's going to work just fine. It just pisses me off a little bit. So, I'm going to put an end on the alternator side first. That way, I can hook it up to the alternator and then drag it over here to know exactly how long it has to be without it flopping around like a dead fish. Get yourself a good set of cable cutters like these. These aren't very large, maybe 10 inches or so, but even with the 1 gauge, they slice through it like butter. It's no big deal. So if you were to try and use like a wire cutters, like these guys, it would be a huge pain. So nice set of cable cutters. So I've got 2 different sizes of lugs here. Might be kind of hard to tell, but one's like a 3/8 and one's closer to, I think, a 5/16. And so I'm digging around to make sure I use the right size. I don't know exactly which one's going to be correct. I'm going to peek under the car. I'm pretty sure the 3/8 is closer. And indeed it is. So 3/8 for the car side. Got the one end on. I will now go underneath and connect it to the alternator and route it kind of how I want it, and then come back up and cut it and do this end. I went under and I've attached it to the alternator and brought it over here and cut it to right about where I want it. It's going to be right here. And I'd like it to kind of go between the head and the water pump there. The ground that I have on the engine here will keep it from roaming any closer to the headers. So I think it's a pretty solid spot. I've also left enough slack to zip tie it once to the sway bar, just so it doesn't flap around the bottom. I've got that hooked up. It's a little bit wobbly right now. Like I said, I'll put a zip tie down below to secure it. The next thing I need to do is handle the exciter wire. And that's the wire that runs from the actual chassis to the alternator and tells it to begin charging. On the 89 240SX, It's a red and white wire, and it sends a switched 12-volt signal to the alternator. On the LS, it is a 4 to 8, sometimes up to 10-volt wire. And so what I need to do is I need to actually lower the voltage by installing a resistor. So I'm going to dig around and find that wire down below. I'll bring it up here. I forgot my soldering stuff, so I got to go back inside and grab that. But then I will solder that resistor in line and add a connector to it, and we'll get it plugged into the actual alternator. That should finish up the alternator wiring. So this is the alternator harness and some stuff. I don't actually know what all is in this guy. Judging by what's left down there, it probably contains the starter wiring and the alternator and other things. The wire we need is this guy right here, white with red stripe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off of here, and I'll figure out which of these connectors it goes back to. I will pull it out of the loom and clean it up, and then solder in the resistor and extend it over to the alternator. One wire free, the old alternator wire, I think. And now I've got these two here. I have no idea. I think this is probably starter. In fact, I bet it is, because I've got a thicker positive wire here and then a ground. So I'm going to keep this handy. And that leaves this mess here for alternator and things. Now, I don't know what all this goes to, but this guy here looks like our alternator. It has the white red, and it comes up over to this one here. Now this, let's see here. This is the one that plugs into the actual chassis here, right here. So, here's my white red. Gosh, what a mess. There we go, okay. I'm gonna check the wiring diagram to see if any of these other wires are actually useful. I don't know if they go to lights or horns or what, but they may do something. This one, however, so this is interesting. I'll have to check this one too, because this goes, so this goes to the actual fuse block. This looks like the charge wire for the alternator here, or at least one of the wires, the signal wires to the alternator. And the black one goes elsewhere. So we don't need this white wire anymore, I don't think. But we definitely need this guy here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut this. I'll leave a few inches on this side. And if I don't need these connectors, then I'll depin them and take them out. I don't wanna leave any extra wiring in the car that I don't need, nor do I want any wiring in the car that could start a fire at some point. So we've got our signal wire, but I don't feel any, oh, there's one. Just looking for cracks or splits. I got one right here. The rest is pretty okay. So, get rid of this crap here. So much crap in these harnesses, ugh. All right, whatever. So now what I'll do is I will clear off my bench over here, I'll move you over there, and I'll solder it up. Got my soldering iron out, it's heating up. I have my wire loosely dangling here. I'm using a 470 ohm half watt resistor, which is what all of the LS dudes say to use when wiring it up to a 12 volt switch power supply. And I'm just going to pull one off the thing. Resistors are super inexpensive. And so for a pack of 100, it was like $6. And for a pack of 10, it was like $8. I'm going to trim the legs of it up a little bit here. And then I'm going to get some flux on my wire and on the resistor the laziest way possible. Stab it and stab it. There we go. I didn't have any water to wet down my little soldering thing here, so I went outside and grabbed some snow. There we go. That'll help clean that up. I should have grabbed a little pliers, because this resistor is going to get hot real fast. And first I'm going to tin the wire itself. When you tin something, you add your flux to it, you heat it up, and then you're going to melt some solder into it. The flux is going to help the solder actually penetrate. And by tinning it, it's going to kind of keep it together, as well as make it easier to solder here in a second. Now, I've got a special tool to hold all this stuff, but it's not outside. So I am being a little lazy and kind of just trying to make them be friends here on their own. But the challenge is that everything else wants to move. So perhaps I should have grabbed my little helping hands, they call them. I've bent them so they're touching and making friends. Just be careful with my soldering iron so that I don't move it. That's not going anywhere. So now I have to figure out how long it needs to be to make it over to the actual alternator. I'll do that and then I'll come back. I've taken a length of wire and wired it up to my connector here for the alternator side. And I ran it to where I want to run it and kind of connected it, or at least draped it to where it should go in the end. So now I should be ready to wire it to the resistor. Just like last time, I'm going to trim off a chunk of it and I will diddle it in the flux here using my very high-tech cable holder. There we go. I will strip this wire just about that much, and before I forget, I'm going to get some shrink wrap and I think 1/8 inch, maybe 1/8 inch, and prepare that for the solder joint. I'm going to slide it far enough back on this wire that it is not affected by the heat. If you don't do soldering a lot, eventually you're going to leave your heat shrink too close to the end, and what will happen is it will heat and shrink while you're trying to solder it, and it is a pain in the butt because then you have to take your solder joint off again and start all over. Okay. So let's get this guy soldered up. And what I would like to see is the solder going all the way to the bottom. All the way to the bottom. There we go. I can make words there. Okay. Let's let that cool off a second. We'll go with the old tug test. Okay, we can pull on it. It's not going anywhere. So I'm gonna let this cool off a little bit. I'll slide the shrink wrap over it shrink wrap it, and the exciter wiring, good to go. And there we go. Nice, neat, clean, ready to rock and roll. I am going to, no, you know what? I forgot something. I forgot something kind of important. When I was wiring up the alternator wire, the power wire there, I forgot to wire in a fuse, and I actually have a fuse for it. I'm going to pull that wire back off. We'll put a fuse on that, put it back in place. I'm not going to show you every minute step in wiring up the actual fuse block and everything, because you've seen me do it 10 times now. But what I'm using is a mega fuse, which I'm too dumb to get open right now. It's a 175 amp system, so I got some 175 amp mega fuses that I'm going to wire in line. And I'll probably just wrap it in electrical tape to keep any gunk from getting in here. I'm thinking I'm not going to actually attach this anywhere to the chassis. There's not going to be any tension on it. It shouldn't be a big deal. I'll get that in place. Okay, so I have attached the fuse and tiny fuse box you can see down there in line with my charge cable now. Let me show you that down here a little bit. See if I can get you a better, there we go, right there. It is a 175 amp mega fuse. I will, after I test everything, probably wrap that fuse box in electrical tape just to keep the weather out of it. But I think that's going to be just fine. It's not going to rattle around much. It's not going to bang against anything. It'll be fine there. I have also finished up charge wire here. I'm going to take the harness inside tonight and research what the other wires do so that I can de-pin the ones that are no longer used to clean this whole thing up. So that should get this wonderfully cleaned up, and once that's done, I'm ready to plug this in and not have to worry about it again. The alternator should be done. Next on the list is the starter. I need to figure out if the stock power wire can support the amperage for the LS starter. If it can, great. I'll extend the one that comes from the relay in the relay box to the starter so it reaches, clean it up, terminate it all pretty, starter's done. If not, I'll swap out the starter relay with a higher amperage one and swap the power wires from both sides and get that going. So that is the next task. So last night, as promised, I went inside and I cleaned up this connector here, de-pinning all the cables that were not necessary. And I believe the only one that's necessary from this harness, or the only one that's necessary from this connector, is this exciter wire, energizer wire, whatever you want to say. I also, and I'm not a big fan of electrical tape, but the leads on that resistor are so thin that I didn't want them to kind of bend and eventually snap. So what I did was I took a bit of zip tie and I made kind of like a brace or a splint, and then I taped around it to give the area where that resistor is a bit more strength. So now this can be plugged in. Here is all the stuff I de-pinned from that. I didn't want to just cut it and tape it. I think that's sloppy, so I de-pinned it all. So this all stores somewhere. And with those two things, the starter is going to be ready to go. And that's awesome. So I'm going to get this plugged in quick a second. I kind of got it dressed in with zip ties to follow the path of the charge wire. So it goes down there, kind of around. I know having it on the top of the sway bar isn't the best thing, but that's what it is for now. And then up to where it lives over here. So the alternator now should be done, which is really cool. Now I hope to finish we'll start and finish the starter. So the starter on the LS, if my research is correct, doesn't need to go through a relay. It has a signal wire, which I should be able to use the stock one off the 240, and that connects to the solenoid, and the solenoid acts kind of as an internal, or as a single unit relay. So I should be able to wire power directly from my battery then to the back of the starter, and then from the existing, I believe it's white-black or black-white, I'll check my notes, signal wire to the starter. And that should take care of the starter side of things. I will get started on that right now. Now the recommended size for the starter wire, based on potential amperage draw, is 2 or maybe 4 gauge. I don't have 2 or 4 gauge. I've just got more of this 0 gauge. So rather than buy a length of it just for this one 3-foot ring or 3-foot run, I'm just gonna use what I have. It'll be overkill, but it'll be fine. I'm gonna throw one end on it first, then I will attach the starter and drag the line back to my battery positive terminal, cut it, and then make that end. Just like I did with the alternator. Now, the terminal coming off the back of the starter is in such a position that it might make sense for me to bend this to kind of angle it more towards where I need it to go. I don't know how well it's going to go. I'm going to grow pliers and see if I can persuade it a little bit. Yeah, it'll require a bit of force, so I'm going to try with it the way that it is and see what I can do. I ran the other side of this, the starter. I had to bend the connector a little bit on the end to make it work, but it should be fine. So, I'm wondering, there's currently no fuse on this line. If my battery is 700 cold cranking amps, and I want to put a fuse on the starter, does that mean that I should have a 700 amp fuse? My concern is, what if the starter end of this cable comes off someday and is flapping around down there and shorting out? There's not going to be anything to stop it from doing so without a fuse in line. I'm going to Google a second. So the robot said that normally there's a fusible link in between the battery positive and the starter. So to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and put a fuse in there. The robot suggested between 150 and 250. I've got another 175 mega fuse. So I will wire that in line. And yeah, I'm glad I'm doing it now. Okay. So in the back here, you can see how I bent that connector to make it work. I marked on the cable where I wanted to cut it, so I will cut it right on my mark. I am getting about as sick of making cables as I'm sure you guys are of watching me make cables. It is only by pure luck that I ended up with 2 of these things, so that ended up being quite fortunate. 175 amp, inline mega fuse, ready to rock and roll. It may pop, I'm not sure, but if it does, it won't be that big of a deal to fix. And stupid zip tie. And I could always go with a bigger one, so. So cool. It's wired up, everything's out of the way. It fits here nicely. It's not too close to it's not any closer to the exhaust than that ground is, so I think that'll be good. Mount this guy right here when the time comes, and it should be ready to rock. In theory, I should be able to tap it to the battery and nothing should happen, but I'll wait on that. Okay, now to locate the wire that actually handles the signal for the starter. I've got these guys here, which are gonna be just a frickin' mess. I'm still scrubbing grime off my fingers from last night. It is just the thickest, worst goo. What I'm looking for is a white wire with black stripe. And I'm not seeing it here, so I wonder if it's on one of these other two plugs that I took off yesterday. There's a white wire here. Okay. Also, I have no idea what these are for. No idea. It might be ignition stuff, it might be, I don't know. I'll figure out what these fuses do, and that'll help me figure out what this does. But a lot of them aren't going to be used anymore. In fact, I bet the majority of this fuse box here probably isn't used anymore. Here are the wires I removed. And if we look at these guys, we've got a white wire that I believe was probably for the starter itself. We have a black wire that I think is for a ground. We have a black and yellow, which this might be it. I'll check my notes a second. I was hoping to get more done today, but it doesn't look like it's going to happen. I'm going to have to do more research to figure out what the signal wire is for the starter. The one that would normally go to the starter relay on 240SX, so that I can wire that into the starter solenoid on the LS starter. That said, that's probably all the work that's going to be done in this video. I do have a couple more things that I'm excited to try here soon. I've got these plates here that will go on the truck style valve covers to clock the coil packs a little bit. So I'm going to see if I like that, and if I do, it should clean this up a little bit, but I'll have to remake the tops of the spark plug wires. Additionally, I need to wire in the power and ground for the ECU and the cable that will trigger the fans. I need to pick up a relay for the fans too, so that's not a big deal. I am really hoping, really planning on starting or trying to start the engine this weekend when my brother comes up to hang out and help. So keep an eye on the shorts, as that is where that will be. Otherwise, as always guys, I greatly appreciate you hanging out with me in the garage, encouraging me and giving me advice. It's fantastic, thank you. I don't think I would have got this far in this project without all of you. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, please take a moment to subscribe down below. Give me a thumbs up or thumbs down depending on how you're feeling, and leave a comment if you have any suggestions. Thanks again for watching, and don't forget to get out into your garage and put a couple hours into your project today. See you in the next one.